Vicky Linnane and welcome to Embrace Therapy podcast. I am a practicing art therapist based in Ireland. In each episode, I will interview guests from various fields of therapy and well-being with the aim to encourage healing through embracing therapy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a really unique episode of the Embrace Therapy podcast. Today's guest is another podcaster. Not only is she another podcaster, but she's also an art therapist. So we've decided to collaborate. So my guest this week is the Canadian art therapist, Amelia Hutchison. I'm really excited to have her on, and I really loved how this episode turned out. It's a really organic conversation. I just let it flow. There's not any edits. It's a long one, but it's a good one. And I really hope that you enjoy it. So a little bit on Amelia. So she was raised in British Columbia in Canada, and she's a recent graduate from the Kutenai Art Therapy Institute. And yeah, so she really gives a lot to those that listen to her podcast, which is Art Therapy in Real Life. And it was her capstone for her diploma in art therapy. So it's an 8-episode series, and it features conversations with art therapists and expressive arts therapists from Canada and the US. And it explores why creativity is a crucial tool for mental health in the wake of collective grief and trauma, and how arts therapists can address issues of social justice. So it's really a happening podcast, and you should definitely check it out. So it's Art Therapy I.R.L, which stands for In Real Life, and you can get that on Apple, Google, Spotify, and all your usual places where you get your podcasts. So without further delay, I will introduce you to Amelia, and I hope that you enjoy listening to this podcast episode.
Hi, Amelia. This is so exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited as well.
I'm just chuffed to be doing this with you. It's such an opportunity. So thank you.
Well, likewise, yeah. So for everyone listening, this is kind of a special episode. Vicky and I are both art therapists and both podcast hosts. So we thought it would be fun to do a crossover episode and just be in conversation with one another about the ways we practice, the things that we have learned in our work in art therapy, and then also in the work of podcasting. So
yeah, we're fairly unique in that way. You know, we've got this little niche going on, you know, art therapists / podcasters. So yeah, I'm a big fan of your podcast. I just really think it's incredible. And the guests that you've picked, they're really just so interesting. So I've been really enjoying the journey that you've been on. And my podcast, I suppose, started a little while ago. So it's Embrace Therapy Podcast. And yeah, so it's just really nice to do this podcaster to podcaster.
And your podcast was such an influence. When I was starting to record, my podcast was initially my thesis research or my capstone research for my graduate diploma. And I was kind of looking around like who is having these conversations, who is talking about our field and starting to elevate it in this way. And you're that person. You've had such a prolific podcast interviewing different kinds of therapists all around the world and bringing those conversations about mental health into light. So thank you for the inspiration and for kind of leading the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, it really just started small, and it's really nice to see that it's continuing to grow alongside me. So I really like that, and I'm just delighted that there's some people checking it out. So it's great.
Well, why don't we both start by just giving a brief introduction? Who are we? So who are you?
It's very important, isn't it? And it's always hard as well. When you have a new client coming in, they have to get to know you as well as you getting to know them. So it's a very important question. So yeah, I'm Vicky Linnane. I'm based in Ireland in Europe. So it's a small little island, but yeah, we are well known all across the world. So that's where I am. And yeah, I'm an art therapist since 2015. But before that, I would have done creative arts facilitation in hospitals. So I've got my foot in the door for years in this kind of way of using art in kind of a well-being situ, and just seeing it as therapeutic. So yeah, I've been doing this a while. And then the podcasting was just an extra thing that kind of came about. But yeah, I suppose that's probably a short answer for now. But would you like to answer the question? Who are you?
I'm Amelia Hutchison, and I'm a Canadian art therapist. I'm an uninvited guest on Sinixt territory, also known as Winlaw, British Columbia. And I think I have kind of a similar kind of backstory as you. I did lots of creative arts facilitation leading up to becoming an art therapist. My focus was kind of community arts, lots of rehabilitation centers and prisons, and kind of using art as a way of holding conversations about social justice or community space. And then moved into studying art therapy, graduated about a year ago or a year and a half ago. And I've been working online ever since.
Oh, it's just fantastic. It's lovely to hear that you had that experience before, going into the qualification. Is it a master's level as well for you with art therapy?
It's a post-baccalaureate diploma. So the way it works in
Okay.
Canada and with the Canadian Art Therapy Association is you either need the master's degree or basically a master's equivalent. So the answer is basically yes, but a diploma is what I would say that I have.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. We'd have similar, I suppose the school that I would have gone to would have been Crawford College of Art and Design. And then they have this accrediting body of a CIT, it's called. But yeah, so they would have master's levels, but I suppose for others in the island of Ireland, it's yeah, it varies. It's like that. It's like diploma, or you might have the MSc kind of style as well. So there's a few different kind of variants, I suppose, but we're all doing pretty much the same work, like we're all kind of doing the same. And for the part of you that like really likes being in the room with people and then going online for your first, like, how did you find that? That must have been hard, I'd imagine.
Well, it was such an interesting thing to graduate from art therapy
Mm.
school. All of my practicum, in Canada, you need around 350 hours kind of in the course of your program of direct client work. And all of that had been in person. So my training was very much kind of in the room, regulating with someone, sharing materials, like being with someone else's body. And then the pandemic hit. And I graduated 2 months later into a very different world and a very different kind of landscape for practicing.
Yeah.
So it's been, it's hard to describe how it's been. I don't know what it would have been like to do it any other way, but I have been just amazed and blown away at what's been possible online and the accessibility it's created. The connection that's possible through Zoom has really surprised me. And I think it's exciting that, this modality that most people think of as being so tactile, so reliant on being in person, it can translate, right? And not every situation and every client relationship is perfect for online, and that's totally okay. That's our jobs as clinicians to determine whether or not it's going to be a good fit for online therapy. But overall, I think I've learned so much in the course of, first of all, interviewing people and being in dialogue with other therapists about how they work online, and then having wonderful opportunities to begin client relationships and see them through that way.
Totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really see that, I suppose moving on to online in some way just opens a whole other kind of way of working. I guess it's I would never be a pessimist anyway, but I would see just so much opportunity. Like your last person that you interviewed was saying, "Oh, I was in India yesterday," and like all this kind of thing. I just think that's incredible. Like that we can just really reach out and connect.
Mm-hmm.
And like I really do think, like I totally hear what everybody would think about art therapy, like being so visceral and needing to share the materials with each other and stuff. But the basics that you have at home, whatever you have right now, is just enough,
Well,
It
that's
really
something I think
is.
is really exciting when someone comes in and it's like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, do I need to go to the art supply store? Do I need to buy a bunch of expensive materials? Like some of my favorite interventions with clients are things that require no art materials or a
Hmm.
single piece of paper or creating a sculpture of found materials just from around your home and beginning to see the things that just surround you on a daily basis as being creative tools.
Exactly. And being, up for going outside before the session, foraging, bringing in things from the outside, and connecting with nature through Zoom. Like, why can't we do that?
Mm-hmm.
We all have experience of what it's like being at the beach and sand and stones and seashells. And like, why can't we bring some of those things in? If you're near a beach, bring it in. And, bringing in leaves, we can do anything with those kind of materials. They're all around us and they're free. So, why not? So I've definitely
Yeah.
found that that's been something that I've been doing a lot as well.
Well, so what's your
Bringing,
journey been
yeah,
around working online? How's the pandemic shaped your practice? You've got a solid footing in working in person with clients.
yeah.
What was your journey through the digital world in the pandemic?
It was, I suppose, similar because there was no other experience before of working online. So that was new to me as well as it was new to you. But I suppose the great thing was all the clients I had already, were the ones jumping on with me. So we're kind of
Mm-hmm.
going through it together. So that was quite nice, and weird as well to negotiate. But it was fine. I think we both kind of grew through it. And like that again, it took some people just an hour to be with me to get that, like, oh, this is for me. And then other people were like, yeah, no, no, 2 sessions in, yeah, I can't. I'm gonna have to wait till we're back in the room. And that was fine. Everybody's different. Um, what I found really worked well was using the space for other therapists, and providing that space for them to use the art. Like they might be psychotherapists, just talk therapists, counselors, and giving them the opportunity to connect with themselves through Zoom. And that was great. I did work with another art therapist called Heidi Morrison, and we did great work over the year from, I think, October till April, once a week with, sometimes we'd have 12 other therapists on Zoom,
Oh,
just
wow.
connecting, and doing art. And obviously, because we're all therapists, we could kind of go to the same place, I suppose, and feel safe that we could do the work. So it was very therapeutic and very healing, and that was great. So I think that's something I'm going to take away, knowing that I can kind of pull again on those kind of resources that I've pulled on already, and know that that's something I can just step into, to do kind of a group work like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that great because I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have been brave enough to be like other psychotherapists. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. Good learning.
Was it you facilitating the group for other kinds of therapists, or
Mm,
was it kind of a group support type of
it
thing?
I suppose it started out with being very much like facilitating. And
Mm-hmm.
then I suppose because we were all therapists, it did end up being a little bit more fruitful and becoming a little bit more peer. And that would be my nature anyway. I suppose I wouldn't be other, I would be part of the group. I wouldn't find it very easy to stay out in the periphery. That wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be my style. Everyone's different, but I'd be showing my artwork and I'd be kind of giving my 2 cents about my piece, and they'd share theirs as well. So it ended
Mm-hmm.
up being kind of a group process as well. Um, but yeah, respecting boundaries all the same. But yeah, so that was something totally different, and I'll take that away from the pandemic. That
Mm-hmm.
experience was lovely, lovely, lovely.
Well, I'm glad you
Um,
bring up the peer support piece because I think,
yeah,
one of the things I love about your show is there's this kind of pulling back of the curtain for therapists. And it's really wonderful, I think, to know and hear more about the ways that therapists support themselves and support each other and what goes into making sure that they're kind of ready and able to hold that space for people when it comes time and gathering together, sharing in experiences, offering peer support or supervision or whatever the process is that, helps you navigate the pandemic or navigate kind of a new way of being, whether it's online or outside or whatever the circumstance.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important, isn't it? I suppose, the Embrace Therapy podcast, I suppose, did start off as a WhatsApp group.
Mm.
And it was exactly that. It was just that peer support. So I think, I asked, so many people that come onto my podcast, like, what is self-care to you? So I'd love to ask you that question as well, Amelia, of like what fills your cup, like what makes you feel solid going into work, or feeling, I suppose, a safe container, knowing that you can provide that space and be that stillness. I think that's very important. That safe holding. How do you get to that? What works for you?
Well, carrying on with what you were sharing, supervision and peer support are huge. I actually have two supervisors with slightly different disciplines depending on the work I'm doing. I see a counselor and social worker in the context of one job, and then I have a clinical supervisor who's both a counselor and an art therapist. So
Gorgeous.
lots and lots of support from just incredible therapists who've been doing the work for a very long time. So I have, this very regular opportunity to come and, bring forward what I'm doing with clients, what I'm going through, and just have that professional support. So that's definitely one. And then peer support as well, like staying really well connected with the cohort of art therapists I graduated with. And, we've all gone in very different directions. Like there's some people doing work with only kids. There's some people doing like equine art therapy. So art therapy with horses. There's people in all sorts of different corners of the mental health world, and being able to kind of generally, obviously respecting confidentiality, but come together and just share in the experience of like, what is it like to be a new art therapist in this field? So I feel very supported by just, my kind of 10 or my cohort of 10 other art therapists who graduated around the same time. So I guess that's professionally what keeps me well. Personally, staying in my own art practice is really huge. It can be really easy. I'm not sure if this has been your experience to, go through a program or to be doing art therapy in your daily life, but then forget to do it with yourself. So I have a daily ritual of doing morning pages. So that's just 3 pages of automatic writing. I see you're just nodding your head.
Gorgeous.
So for anyone who doesn't know morning pages, it comes from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. And it's just a really simple practice of opening up your journal every morning, first thing when you wake up, and just automatic writing, 3 pages, anything that comes out. So I find like that's a way I keep my wheel clear, is doing that. And then whatever else needs to happen, being in my body, maybe that's a movement practice one day, maybe that's an art practice another day, maybe that's going outside and taking the dog for a really long walk, but lots of opportunities just to check in. And then, and then not overworking, which is tough, not over scheduling yourself.
Yeah. I find that part of my brain, the scheduling part of my brain, very rusty. I'm not good at that. I need to like oil that a lot. I'm not very good with the calendar and the scheduling, but there's been very little errors. There's been some times where I've like had 2 people booked in at the same time, but like, that's not too often. But that part of me, I need, a little bit help with. That's why scheduling apps are pretty good. I'm getting used to those. But yeah, like scheduling in time for yourself, like having a date with yourself, as my supervisor has said, is so important. And I've gotten into the habit of actually penciling in like in between. So let's say if I have Friday, I might have 3 clients in the morning, and then I have my lunch, but I'll also pencil in an hour for me.
Beautiful.
Which is really nice, especially on a Friday. It's just bang in the middle of my week. So it's really good for me. I used to also take a Thursday as my golden day, which was something my supervisor mentioned as well.
Golden day. Love that.
Yeah, I had to, like, unfortunately, since September, I've had to give that up because it's just been referral after referral. And it is that, isn't it, Amelia? It's just like trying not to get to that burnout. So like for me, I'm like, when can I push that back again? When can I go back to the, just the 3 days? So I do 4 full days right now. So yeah, it is hard. You're constantly juggling and trying to fit in time for you, because otherwise you're kind of going to feel that skidding, that unsteadiness. So yeah, connecting with nature, like you said, going for a walk with the dog, is very important. Moving, so like any kind of movement, no matter how short it is something that I do all the time. So just, it can be very gentle movement, or it can be like a practice like yoga that can be helpful, of course. But it doesn't have to be even that grand. You can be just in your kitchen dancing to your favorite song. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the main thing for me is playback theater. I've talked about it on my podcast, but I'm happy to talk about it here with you.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm part of a playback theatre company called Full Circle Playback, and it's based in Ireland. And we would have been in the room, but since Zoom, it's been incredible. Every Monday, I'm transported. Like, we have people from Poland, Germany, and America joining us, every Monday night. And yeah, all those little boxes on the screen, we have moved and cried like we've done everything together, and it's amazing. It's like improv, but basically you are retelling the story of the teller. So you have somebody tell their story, and then you retell it to them through your body, voice, and you can use everything, I suppose, in the space. So sometimes I might bring in some scarves or props as well. So it's
Oh,
beautiful.
wow.
Yeah. And it's like, it's pretty quick. Like you wouldn't do more than 3 minutes, for each story or something. And some stories are like 30 seconds. So it's just beautiful to come from that place. Like your morning pages, I feel it's kind of similar. It's just emptying and then refilling or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me
So
of
nice.
this really beautiful question that comes from the book How to Not Always Be Working by Marley Grace.
Mm.
Do you know the one?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, there's this beautiful question of, okay, what is my work and what's not my work? And just
Mhm.
getting really clear on those subtle distinctions. And, as creative people, I find the distinction can be kind of blurry if you're a person that loves art or has an art practice, and then that comes into the work you do with clients.
Mhm.
But I think what I'm hearing is like, okay, there's these times in the week where I'm doing something that it's just for me, or it's just for my
Mhm.
family or my community. It's not necessarily going to be it's not necessarily directly going to be involved in my job. Like it might not go on Instagram. It might not be communicated to a client. Like it's just for me. Like what are those little pockets in your routine that are reserved just for your soul, just for your own mental health?
Mhm. Yeah. And it's so important to ask yourself those questions, isn't it? Like, um, you know, doing something mindfully obviously is very important. Um, so even if it's just baking for you, because you deserve this time and you deserve to eat that cake,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. Um, but yeah, I think that's really important in this line of work. And also like a massage. I'm finding I need somebody to touch my body more
Yeah.
than ever. Like I'm just
Mhm.
like, work that out. I actually need that so much, that grounding. Um, so I'm finding that's another one that I'm kind of leaning on more and more. And it could be just that lack of body in the room, maybe as well. Even though I'm in the room, but and actually, Amelia, when do you plan on getting back into the room, or do you plan? Are you quite happy?
Well, it's interesting. So I miss the room. I really miss being in person with clients. I think especially I just miss offering materials. Like it's
Yeah.
a really different experience, art therapy, if you're arriving on your Zoom screen and you have pencils and paper and glue, as opposed to coming into an art therapy studio where there's 4 or 5 shelves just full of every material you could imagine, and you can take everything and use everything. So I miss being able to offer that That said, at the beginning of the pandemic, I moved to a really rural part of British Columbia. It's a small community. I also, live in the community where I studied art therapy. So there's a lot of art therapists here. So I think the online is working for me, at least for this chapter of my life. I think I'm really happy to keep exploring this and keep figuring out how to do this really, really well. And then I anticipate maybe 5 years from now, or at some point when it feels like the right move, to find a space and get back to that. But for now, I don't have any plans of going back.
Gorgeous. And who are the people that you would work with generally online? Like, what kind of person comes to you, or do you work with an organization, or like, I know you have two different supervisors, so I'm kind of curious, I suppose. Who do you see right now?
Right. So it's all adults. Generally, I see women. But I work for an organization called Shannon Maroney and Associates. So Shannon Maroney is one of my supervisors. And with her organization, we focus on supporting people in achieving post-traumatic growth, oftentimes through justice system journeys. So that's really interesting work. And my own experience navigating the justice system definitely informs that. So that's kind of one facet. And then just in my own private practice, I also see adults. And I think the general through line through all of the work is usually trauma or grief, but big life transition are kinds of the topics that I end up working with art therapy. How about you?
It's interesting because right now it would be mostly children, and most of them would be from 10 to 14, which is I suppose some part of me didn't want to work with kids. I actually really just wanted to work with adults because I've had such really like poignant moments with people, especially with trauma and grief. Yeah. And knowing that experience and the profound effect that art therapy has on those. But then somewhere along the way, probably becoming a mother had to do a lot to do with it. But somewhere along the way, I was like, intervention, at an earlier age, if I can get to that adult before, the damage was really starting to come, if I can get to that preventative measure, I'm going to go for that. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And some of the cases, I suppose, would be just the attachment style kind of piece, and I'm working with that. But a lot of the time, it's actually transitional kind of things as well. Just, kind of parents going through separation, divorce can be quite a common one. Or even just something so simple as like having a new sibling. That can have such a big impact on another child. But yeah, so obviously, like, I have a lot of experience in mental health in hospitals, working with adults. So when I do see a child coming to me, I do work with the family too, because a lot of the time that trauma is, it's come from somewhere else, it's generational. So it's nice to be able to do that. And I think down the line, like you're talking about 5 years time, I think, 5 more years, I hope to be doing family systems therapy. Oh, it just looks so good and so interesting. So that's, I think, I'm kind of going to put that out there in the ether and be like, somebody give me the money and I will do that. It's quite a costly one to do here in Ireland, but I that's my hope. Yeah, for myself.
The call is there.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's just so much in that. Like, could just, I'd like to get my teeth into that kind of work, I think.
How do you imagine that would look or work? Like, what does doing art therapy with a family look like?
I suppose it's happened because, it's funny. Like sometimes it's the only intervention that will work, So generally it's like, a big circle and 2 bags of clay, and we'll just sit there for an hour and we'll work things out together. And that really does shift things for a client. That can really help. But for me, yeah, I think my vision would be to work in the place where I am right now, which is called Soworth, and it's in the middle of this beautiful landscape. It's got a natural forest there, and it's gorgeous. And there's this lovely big room, and I could just see families after family coming in and just doing the work there. Yeah, I suppose the vision would be just to help, stop the rot in families,
Mm-hmm.
in some way be that crossroads for them to kind of, am I going to continue this trauma being such a unspoken thing? Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? It's like, once you open that door with a family, all those skeletons come out, and what do you do then? Like, what's the art therapist going to do then? So I feel like that's something down the line that I'm going to do.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
mission. I love that.
Yeah. And I think, when we get into this line of work, especially the art, we're curious people, and I think we pick up on a lot more from people than others. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of creative person. We have a lot more empathy, maybe. I don't know. What do you think? What is the difference? What makes an art therapist?
I think it's a practiced skill of noticing. I
Yeah.
think the way I was trained had a lot to do with phenomenology, or the question of like, what do you see? What are you noticing? What is happening right in front of you? And some people can frame that as a kind of mindful practice, just being with what is. But in art, it's such a clear question. Like, you're sitting with a piece. It's been made with visual media, perhaps, and you're taking the time and you have support in answering the question, like, what am I noticing about this? And it's an incredibly valuable question. Like, I think about the context of family, sitting in a circle with two bags of clay. I just love that. Making something and then stepping back and say, okay, what are we noticing about what we made, how we made it, what's here? And taking or leaving the metaphors that come out, or the processes that came out. Like, there's so much material to work with when we're using the visual materials or the tactile materials. And it's so revealing. So I think what makes an art therapist is having a lot of reverence and patience and curiosity for the question of what am I noticing? What do I see?
Lovely. That's so gorgeous. I recently got the audiobook, the Oprah and Bruce Perry book, What Happened to You? And I think that's such a wonderful question as well. What's wrong with you? No, that's archaic, that question. What happened to you is a lovely way of framing it. And I think, yeah, it's in us to notice and observe. I suppose that kind of leads on a little bit then to the whole self. And you said before in a podcast as well, capital S self. I loved that. I just wrote that down. I was like, I really like that. I know we see it when we type, certain things like, in our research or something, we might say that. But to actually say it like capital S self, I don't know. It just got me goosebumps. It's like, yeah, so nice. And do you find that you provoke the capital S self in your clients, or like, how does that come about? Like, yeah,
It's a beautiful question. So I think when I say capital S self, we're talking about spiritual practice here, or how someone might relate to what is bigger than themselves, or a higher power, or whatever language feels comfortable for them. And it's different for every single person. It's funny that we're having this conversation, because just this morning I sat down with my morning pages and with some watercolor paints, and was really kind of trying to dig into the question of what do I mean when I say self or higher power? And truthfully, I don't know. And I think that's where I like to keep it. I think I know what it feels like. It feels like being in flow with creativity. It feels like sharing or being witnessed. It feels like kind of getting a really good idea feeling. It feels like being connected. So when we talk about kind of getting close to capital S self, it's going to mean something radically different for every single person. But my hope is that an art practice and a practice of noticing can get people to a place where they're feeling close to themselves, whether that is close to God, with a capital G, because they have a relationship to spirituality or religion, whether that means going out into nature and just feeling like a human animal on the earth, or whether it means that they've, got to put aside the to-do list for some time and just be in a creative process. So for some people that might be something spiritual. For some people that might just be a settling of the nervous system.
Yes. I really like that you said that, the nervous system, because it's also I suppose it's interesting to look at it that way, because a lot of the research right now really, really underpins what we do and supports it and backs it up. It's gorgeous. Polyvagal theory, like it's gorgeous to see that work come out. But it misses that spiritual side of us, and I think that's where the art can kind of come in.
Mm-hmm.
So, the writer and philosopher Iris Murdoch has written a lot about this topic of goodness.
It is like getting closer to goodness.
I like
and I really
that.
like that, because like a lot of people would say godliness or whatever, but this is like, instead of that, it's goodness. I think a little bit of Julia Cameron as well. She would have said, if God doesn't suit you, then you can replace it with good. Which is really nice.
Oh, I like that. If God doesn't suit you, then you can replace it with good, and whatever is good for you. Huh.
Whatever's good for you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of hers, and she's got a new book coming out as well. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I think, I was working with a parent and child the other day, and I obviously love clay. I talk about it a lot in my podcast. It would be my go-to. But the question that one of them had was, what's it about the clay? Like, why clay? And I'm like, well, what, you tell me, what about it? Like, and for them it was just the sensation, and that was it, just feeling the coldness against the skin and stuff. But for me, like, I was like, well, it taps into us, like, back in the cave making pots, it taps into something bigger, something old in us, so I like that. And I have a friend, Joni, who digs her own clay.
Oh, wow.
Ah, that's incredible. Like, so she's really cool. She's an art therapist as well. And just that idea of I'm just going out. I'm going to get stuck in the mud, dig my own clay, and use that to make this beautiful container. Yeah. So I love
And literally,
that.
yeah, like getting to take something of the earth, transform something of the earth, and literally make a container, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So nice. Yeah.
Well, how about for you? What is the spiritual in art therapy for you?
It is like having another presence, like, and that's why I chose the triangle for my logo in Rich Art Therapy. The logo of the triangle, which is, two people and the art. But it is that, like, Freud would have talked about it, and Jung would have talked about it, just this, there's always another, and for us it's the art making process. And I think having that there, it's almost like being in the car than having a conversation. It's like your attention is on, straight ahead. And it can be just that for some people. It can be just easier to have the focus on something else, especially for people with anxiety. It can be really nice to just have something else in the room to take the focus for a while. But then the magic happens, and it's really hard to quantify its phenomenon. Yeah, it's really hard. But we need to get better at that, I think. Well, I definitely do. Getting better at explaining what the magic is. But it is that making sense of self, unraveling, and yeah, and putting it back together.
I think we do and we don't, right? Like there's a place of, and especially as an art therapist, because oftentimes our field gets judged as not being solid enough or evidence-based enough, and it is. Like I'm so eager to share the ways that art therapy practice is like incredibly effective, and supported by research. And then there's this place, like we use the word magic, and I would use the word magic too. I don't know exactly how to explain what happens when something gets made, and then it always seems to feel relevant. And it always seems to kind of carry a message. And whether that's just the incredible, innate human ability to kind of make myth and pattern and meaning, which like, let's call that magic, or if it's a way of just attuning to, I almost can't even put it into words, and I'm really fine with that.
Yeah, just accepting that. Another word for it is alchemy. That the alchemist, and magic and alchemy. It's so nice. It's so nice to be the facilitator of that. To facilitate that change for someone. I just love doing it so much. So yeah, I suppose just seeing a different world on the page sometimes for someone. If in a case of, let's say, like something like domestic violence, it's giving an opportunity to go somewhere safe, providing that safe place. It can be so important for so many different reasons, but that's just one example.
Well, and that's I think the incredible thing about this field is the versatility. Like if someone needs the very concrete, like I need to make art in this way with this process, kneading clay, doing something repetitive because it calms my nervous system. Incredible, perfect art therapy. And if someone needs to approach it from a place of, I am looking to commune with the divine, or whatever spiritual practice they feel resonant with, there's space for that as well.
Absolutely. It really is that. I'm curious as well, like, you're here in the place, like you've kind of returned back to the place where you were doing your studies, and there's art therapists around you. Do you find that sometimes the place where you're situated has a impact on your work?
Oh yeah.
The location?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. This is the only place I've practiced art therapy. Inside a sunny office in my little home in the forest. But I think back to an interview in the first season of my podcast with Sarah West, who is an eco art therapist, who thinks about the art therapy relationship not as a triangle, but as you described, but also including the context of the place, of the land, and the voice of the land as kind of co-conspirator to the process. So I think yeah, there's a definite effect on my nervous system being in the place that I'm in. I notice, like when I'm in the city, or when I'm even in the next town over, there's a different kind of settling that happens. And I think what I'm noticing kind of a year and a half into doing art therapy work is that I do my best work from the forest, from this quiet place, when I can walk to the river between sessions, and when I have this geographical space. Yeah. How about you? How does place, or the room, or the landscape affect how you show up?
Yeah, I really do think it has a lot to do with it. So I totally agree that it is that context and that extra holding. And for me, working in Soworth, in this beautiful location, there's like Highland cows, these ones with the horns and the fringes.
Yeah.
And there's them just like outside the window. And then, these beautiful trees all around us. And the drive in, I literally smile every single time I pull in to where I work. That location is magic. And then having other experiences, I suppose, in working in psychiatric hospitals. And, there's no windows in a few of them. And that despair, it's there. It has its holding, I suppose, insofar as it keeps certain people safe, which they need. But it's not a hug safe, like, right. That kind of, it's actually almost like a choking, like it doesn't enable that creative flow. And actually, when that happens, sometimes you can have some people, let's say on an MDT, a multidisciplinary team, being like, you're opening too much of my client, that kind of thing. That happens,
Oh,
that's
wow. Yeah.
definitely, yeah. But, I suppose what I mean by that is context has a lot to do with it. And if you can incorporate nature, or if you can bring something from that place, like that river that you might go to between, bringing something of that place with you, it can be felt, So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Mm-hmm.
And where you're at. But I would like everybody to do art therapy in nature at some time. I think, yeah, it's very cool. It's different. And I really do have a lot of passion for those that are doing eco art therapy at the moment. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's such incredible work.
Oh, so good. And like just even that, like there's so much science around the forest floor and what it does for our lungs. And even if it's just a few minutes, 50-minute session in the forest with the forest floor there, you're going to be feeling so much better. Your lungs are going to be clearer. And thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
forest.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But yeah, I suppose there's a lot of privilege in that, in having the space that I have. And I suppose for anyone that's listening there and they just have what they have, just know that even um, giving yourself permission to buy some beautiful plants and bringing in some sand for yourself to connect with nature, that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah, something I carry with me is an experience around just the importance of place for people in their healing journeys. It's a memory of being 18. Like I was fresh into my undergraduate degree, living in Baltimore, and there was this community arts program where students could go and kind of facilitate art workshops and hold creative space for other people. And I was working in the Baltimore City Detention Center in their psychiatric ward. It was an all men's ward. And on the first day, we just did a poll, like had everyone write, what do you want to experience? What kind of materials might you want to work with? Like, how would you like to experience the space? And we collected all of the sheets of paper so we could get some ideas. And one just said, I want to be out of my cell for an hour.
Wow.
I just
Yeah.
want to, have a change of scenery. And how completely important agency and being able to change your physical surroundings are to a person's healing. And what ended up happening over the course of the months that we spent at that detention center was we were able to put art up on the walls, which was huge. It took a lot of kind of requesting and getting permission to actually just leave art up between sessions. But the group participants, I remember hearing them say, it feels so different in here. People come from other wards or other parts of the facility, and there's a palpable difference because instead of it being cinder blocks and artificial light, there's color in here. And people really reflected back to us that, yeah, this is actually been a really important thing, is just having a change of scenery. And that's a very extreme limited example. The effect is amplified when you can actually have outdoor space and are actually given freedom. Like there's a lot there's a lot there. But
yeah, no, it's a beautiful example. Yeah. And why not have it, have it the person who's making the art feeling that empowerment, that like self-recognition and being like proud of themselves with what they have made, and to show it, if they feel that's part of their journey and that's part of their process. Yeah, put it up on the wall. Yeah, of course.
Well, that's something, a huge question that we ask after the art process is done is, okay, what now? Does this need to be burned? Do you need to rip it into confetti and throw it up in the air? Do you need to lock it away in a journal? Or does it need to go up on the wall? Like, does it need to have a frame that fits it perfectly? And do you need to surround yourself with it?
Yeah, it's very important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love those questions at the end, because I don't think a lot of the clients actually think that far ahead, obviously, They just like to get messy and maybe just walk away sometimes as well, which is fine. But yeah, the fun that can be had with tearing up a piece. It's so much fun. I love that. Oh,
And
so
the
good.
understanding that the art doesn't end. Like, yes,
No.
we've had this process, we've been together for an hour, you've made something, and how do you want this experience to continue living on into your life? Are we closing it with ceremony, or are you preserving it with some other kind of ceremony?
Yeah. And you know, that again is another bonus of doing art therapy. Yeah, because you can preserve it. You know, that is something very special, you know. Yeah. I suppose, you know, for me, my experiences with something kind of a bit different was um trying to, I suppose, encourage and empower children who had been bullied, um, and to also improve and, I suppose, encourage empathy in the bystanders in the school. And you know, we I would have started the workshop going like, you know, we're not going to keep any of the art today. And you know, being quite clear with that. And that this is staying in this moment, so you don't need to look at it again, and like that was quite important. And also bringing in something really random to kind of get them, like, you know, an icebreaker. So I would come in with a big bucket of potatoes. You know, and it's not my idea. It comes from a program in the UK. Oh, I just can't remember it right now. I think there's a Z in there somewhere, but I can't remember the name. But it's this beautiful program, you know, building resilience in children. And this is one of their kind of recommendations, is using potatoes. And I just loved it, and it's something that I loved bringing in, and everybody always found it so funny. But they would write a story and a lifestyle, and you know, they write this beautiful story about this potato in groups of 4, let's say. And they'd, you know, really create something. So some of them would be like super spud or whatever, you know, they'd be very creative. And then at the end of it all, we put this character back in the bucket, and I'd get them to see if they could find them again, you know. And they could never. They were like, you know, oh, maybe that's mine, and oh, I can't really tell. They're all very similar, but like, you know, just we're all, you know, so different, but all very similar at the same time. And you know, noticing that one might be picked out and kind of picked on for its differences, and talking about that, and just seeing the change and the conversations that, you know, really young kids can have about themselves and about their peers, and the light switch kind of going on of being like, oh, okay, so they really didn't feel good, you know, when I did such and such, you know. And for it to be just one day kind of thing, I think it was very important. Like if they had their art that they did with me up on the wall, I think that would have been painful. So it's kind of knowing when to do that as well, and coming in with certain goals as well. I think our therapists can kind of come in different situations. Like, so that was a program, you know, with solutions that were, you know, very important to be facilitated, and objectives that, you know, we had to draw out, and, you know, make sure that everyone was on board. So very important work, I suppose, especially working with young children, you know.
And so this was your thesis research, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was so good. Yeah, like my thesis is a long time ago, but it was trying to see what art therapy would be like as an intervention for bullying, and also kind of psychoeducational. So it is a good tool, absolutely, for any school, but it has to be, I suppose, well established in the school and maintained, and the whole school. If one teacher is against it, the whole school just, it won't work. So it's very important that parents are all on board as well, and it can work. There's so much research there, like so much research, like Norway, Sweden, Japan, from the ages like 3 and up, like kindergarten age. You know, there's so much research saying that empathy can be really established, and that bullying tendencies decrease immensely through art therapy.
Wow.
So Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I love that intervention and this idea of going and creating a whole narrative, having this relationship with this potato, this visual
Yeah.
thing, and then back into the bucket. And oh, wait, which one was it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah. Oh, and there's so much opportunity like that. Like even um, Goldie Hawn with her Mind Up school and foundation that she has in Florida and other countries as well. She's got her feet kind of everywhere, I suppose now. But that Mind Up kind of campaign was to do with, instilling mindfulness in children from the age of 3 up. And especially to build empathy so there won't be much bullying anymore. But bringing in the art on top of that was just, I don't know, just give it that extra exploration and deeper process and a big aha moments for little ones. So that was really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, it really helps us mentalize, right? Like
Yeah.
getting what's happening inside your mind out. Like this is,
Mm-hmm.
what I find is so incredible, especially for kids with art therapy, is they get to assert control over something outside themselves. Or
Yeah.
I'm having this feeling. What does it look like in plasticine? Or, I wonder what it is like for this other person, this other character. And you get to practice that in a really safe way with art materials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you? What did you do for your thesis?
So my thesis was my podcast. Would call it a capstone because it wasn't as much of like an academic paper. It was kind of a more creative project. My school really encouraged that.
Mm-hmm.
But the big question I came into the podcast with was, can we maintain the integrity and the specialness of art therapy if we're working online? Or how are we adapting to the pandemic and kind of keeping the good work that we do happening, whether it's outside, whether it's online, whether it's adapting. So that question has been so topical just in terms of my work in the last year and a half, but also for our whole field. So yeah, the question is, can we keep doing it online? Can we keep adapting it? Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's more that we're learning all the time about what situations and what types of clients and needs are really suited to online work. But yeah, that's the research was this series of conversations that some folks listening will have heard with different art and expressive therapists across Canada and the United States about how they have approached pandemic era art therapy.
Mm. Yeah. And it's very important, isn't it, to have this written down as well, and logged in a podcast for history. You know what I mean? Like it's a very important time, and it's lovely to have it recorded. That we can kind of look back on this and see what we've learned from it all.
Mm-hmm.
There's big learning in this, definitely.
Huge learning. We're at this very special moment, I think, in our field of there's been this big shift. We've had to adapt, and now we are really coming into understanding about what's been working, how we might adjust things, like how do we proceed, and what are the best tools in our tool belt for offering, creative resources to people.
Yeah, and I think this is part of it, just connecting with each other across the world, and checking in. What are you doing differently? So
Yeah.
that's how we're going to learn. We're going to learn from each other. Um, yeah, I'm curious. I tapped in some time ago to an art therapist in Tel Aviv, Leora Soto, and I'm hoping to do a little bit more work with her. Just working in Israel as an art therapist is it's fascinating. And yeah, I'm sure there's another corner of the world, Amelia, that you could find, like, that you could inquire what they're up to and what their landscape has an impact on them, just fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much work here, of exploring and uncovering. And it is research, this is totally research. So it's great. I feel like our conversation is kind of come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely.
Well, why don't we end on the question of hope, right? You and I have both been navigating these similar worlds, working online, being in these processes of connecting and engaging with other art therapists from around the globe. What is giving you hope right now as we come towards the end of this year?
I suppose in Ireland, right now, um, people are talking more about their mental health.
Mm.
And when they're ill, they're not embarrassed. They're actually talking about it. And that's giving me hope because conversations are now being had. Whereas before, people might put it down to physical illness. They might say, "Oh, I'm in hospital for a checkup." But no, now like I'm finding people my age and older, which is great, um, being honest. And I'm so hopeful for that this is only going to continue and this conversation doesn't end here. That art therapists and other creative arts therapists, we can all do our part to help. We are healthcare professionals, and I think we're kind of standing up to that plate now, and people are ready for us. And I think they're more accepting, which is great. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all ages. So I'm very hopeful for anybody that's thinking about stepping into this career. Go for it. you know, that's my hope, is that it will just continue and people will continue to accept us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Amelia?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to jump off of that point as well. I think the deeper literacy around mental health that we've been witnessing in the past few years, like I feel like conversations about attachment style or about how trauma affects the brain or about neurodivergence, like those are becoming way more commonplace. And I'm seeing the average person have so much more language for what's going on with their mental health. And it's taking the stigma way, way down. So it makes me so hopeful to be in an era where there are these conversations happening. And it feels a bit more accessible to come into a conversation about mental health and what's going on with me. So that's a huge one. And then I think this moment of hard conversations around the big issues of social justice. I know it's different in every place, but as much as the conversations are hard and heartbreaking, I am really enlivened by the growing dialogues, especially in Canada, around what it means to live under colonialism and white supremacy and capitalism. Like I feel like those conversations have an increasing literacy as well and are coming into the therapy space, and people are making the connections between, hey, I've been living under this kind of economic or political system. This is what's going on in my mental health. Maybe it's not me. So that gives me hope.
Yeah, that filtering down,
Mm-hmm.
and becoming aware of all of its impacts.
Speaking of systems, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really do see that. I think that people are getting more used to talking about bigger things and not being so offended, with, even if we talk about politics with people, it used to be something you just didn't talk about, definitely over here in Ireland, it's kind of hard, there's so much history, even just between north and, below the border, there's so much recent history as well. But we can kind of now negotiate and understand that, this is where I'm coming from, and that's my perspective. And it is maybe a place of privilege, but this is my experience. And then, meeting someone in their experience and just accepting that we're kind of different, and it's hard, I suppose, and a lot of people mightn't know much about Ireland and the conflicts that have happened since the 80s, 70s, 80s, and they're still going. So there's a lot of conflict in Ireland. So I'm with you on that. Even just in my little island, social justice is very important, and it's very alive. Yeah. So yeah, I would like to. Yeah, I would like that hope as well. That conversations, important conversations, hard conversations are going to be had.
And I hope we can continue to have those conversations in the realm of public health and COVID, right? Like I see some of our tools around like restorative conversations. And I'm hoping that we get to a place in communities that are very divided around attitudes about COVID, and the pandemic. And I'm hopeful and looking forward to a time when those same tools for listening and empathy can come into spaces around this big topic.
Yeah, it can only transform. Yeah, that's the only way, really, isn't it? To marry the two for transformation. So yeah, here. Gorgeous.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much, Amelia. This has been gorgeous.
Yeah,
so
this
nice.
has been wonderful. Where can people find you if they are looking for more information about the work you do, how to work with you, how to listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so you can just type in on your phone anywhere you like, Enrich Art Therapy. And I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then the podcast is Embrace Therapy Podcast. And you can get that anywhere, Acast, anywhere you like. Yeah, so I'm so excited, for this to go out. It's such a privilege, I suppose, to just spread the word a little bit more, like a little bit further in, British Columbia. It's very exciting. And what about you, Amelia? Where can people find you to get in touch and perhaps to have some sessions with you?
Yeah, so I'm offering groups and sessions on lots of different topics right now. You can find more information about those on my Instagram primarily. That's Art Therapy I.R.L, I.R.L standing for In Real Life. You can find my website, which is arttherapyinreallife.com. And then you can also find me and my podcast on all platforms that podcasts are available on, also by the same name, Art Therapy I.R.L.
When I came across yours, I was like, I.R.L, is that Ireland? Because like sometimes because I was like, this is so cool, there's another person, and then I was like, oh, in real life, that's even cooler. Yeah, it was so nice. Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity, and yeah, it's just so nice to link in with you, and I really wish you well in the future.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really grateful to have had the chance to collaborate in this way.